So who are you and what do you do?
Are we rolling?
It is rolling.
It is
Secretly.
cool.
Yeah,
Secretly.
yeah.
This is how you
This is how
slowly
we
ease
slow in. Yeah.
It's less intense.
It's a fade in.
I like it. I'm Brittany Gutierrez. Is that too formal? I'm Britt with Howling Music. Everybody calls me Britt, especially at work. So Brittany's a little too much.
Okay.
What do you do there?
I am an executive producer at Howling Music. So my favorite part of my job is actually producing the jobs. But I also have a heavy hand in the sales side as well. So obviously bringing in our jobs and that we produce. So yeah, I talk to people on the agency side. I talk to people on the production side. I talk to people on the post side. I'm talking to everybody all the time. It's like a big part of my job.
As Max described in the last episode, EPs and producers are kind of like the GMs of football teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
connecting
timely.
everybody.
Yeah. A big part of our job is communication, and luckily I'm good at talking. So
Putting the right people at the right places to make
Yep.
projects successful.
yep, make sure everyone's communicating and understanding each other.
Yeah.
What's Howling? Like, give us the backstory on Howling and how you got there. And
Yeah. So I got to Howling. I got to the industry. I actually started in as an agency person. Before I was a producer, I worked as a project manager. Actually, on like the Stingray launch, 2014 Stingray launch in 2012 is when I started. I was a project manager, and then I was sort of pushed into account executive position because they thought I might be good in front of clients. I liked it. I just didn't like sitting in meetings all day. Sometimes my part of the meeting was 10 minutes and I was there for 3-4 hours. I was like, I can't do this. I actually went to school for TV and film. So as soon as I saw the agency producer, I was like, that's where I need to be. So I did that for, almost 10 years, 2 different big agencies working on big brands. And then I sort of was poached from Howling, from working with them, working closely with our founder, David Groh. I was poached. I was sort of courted for a few years, and finally was like, all right, fine, I'll try it out, And I've always loved music, actually. Fun fact, I worked for a radio station in college. In college, I had a radio show. So I always loved like music, and actually I really love audio. Like this is really fun for me. So yeah, that's sort of my background. And I love this side. I think music is very undervalued often in advertising, and it can set a mood. It can change the whole feeling of a piece, and I just think it's very undervalued or not thought about enough or thought about early enough.
how was the I'm very curious. You just sparked my interest in the trend of getting involved in music and your own radio show. Like, how did you connect with that? Early on, was that something that you had always known? You were like, this is a passion of mine, but also film.
Yeah.
I wanted to go into film as well. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, go a little deeper.
So I actually studied medicine first, and I was sort of pushed that way. I liked it. I was interested, but then I was like, after a couple of years of college, I was like, no.
Bit of a U-turn.
Yeah. I was like, this is not for me. I just knew like the people weren't my people. I didn't resonate with the people around me a lot. So music and film and TV were always something that really inspired me, interested me. I just never thought I could do it for a living. Like, you're always told as a child, like, you got to be a cop.
Get a real job.
You got to be a doctor. Yeah, like you want to make money, you got to do these things. And I really
still being told that today. But
yeah. Well, you're in a good place then. People to inspire you in other ways. But yeah, I was always sort of told like, this is what you have to do to make money, and you need to make money to be an adult and like live your life. And I just I I never felt like it was something I could do. I really don't feel like you're educated that way.
Well, I was going to say
in school.
the whole point of this podcast is to demystify production, right? So this whole path of career is so mysterious to the everyday person. So I joke about, I'm still told that today, but really it stems from a lack of understanding of what drives this industry and what opportunities are within it. So I definitely agree with you, especially when you're looking to get into this career. There's a lot of misnomers and misinformation about what it means and the best path forward and all of that.
For sure. Yeah. I don't think we're taught enough in school. It's sort of like, these are the ways. And I don't think kids realize, like I started actually as a, maybe a late teen looking at credits on movies. It's like, look at all those jobs. And it's like, you could do any of that. I think kids need to realize there's so many opportunities, so many different things they could do with their passions. And so for me, it was just, realizing what I was interested in. I literally looked through the book of like all the majors at my college and was like, nothing interested me but TV and film.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was just like, that's where I'm at. Like, what do I want to do? I kind of like was thrown for a loop when I didn't know what to do. And I was like not going towards the medicine path because I thought about that for so long.
It's a very clear-cut path too.
Yeah.
So you, after you graduated, you had your, radio show, you got your sort of experience, right, in college. Immediately after college went to agency, or what was sort of the transition? Yeah,
it was pretty much immediately after college. I went right to agency. I knew somebody, actually a family member that was in advertising, and I knew she loved her job. And so I was kind of, what's that word? Job shadowing, like anybody I knew that liked their job. I was like, who's enjoying life? Let me follow those people around, see what they like. Or see what they do, see what it's like. So I followed her for a day and was like, that seems cool. And then had an opportunity to work in an agency and absolutely, like, I still love agency life. I love agency producing. I was always challenged, always learning. That was something I really valued about that job. I felt like I could constantly, like, learning from production company people, learning from post-production people. It was just constant knowledge. And like every project's so different. I remember writing down one of my like first couple of projects as like a junior producer. I was like, okay, step by step, here's how the projects go. And then like the next project, I was like, just throw that out the window. Like, what is this?
You're like, just new page. Yeah. And then try it again. Nope, didn't work.
None of those are the same. Okay. So there's no like step-by-step process at all, especially if you jump from agencies.
Yeah, I think the thing that we talk about a lot too in here is like every project is like its own business. Yeah. You're running a different business every project you start because the challenges are always different. Like you may have the goals are different. What success looks like can be different. You know, obviously you have your, you get enough experience under your belt. You're like, okay.
In general, these are the things we should be looking for.
Yeah, you can pivot easy.
Yeah, and that comes with the experience really, So if there's people who are just starting out or really trying to understand the agency lifestyle or understand, what a successful project looks like, often you have to do kind of a similar project several times before you really get a sense of like, okay, here's how the business is run. Right. Like, especially, you have your buckets. You could say, at a agency, okay, here is a food shoot, right? We kind of know some of the challenges that are going to come up, but there's always going to be those micro problems in there that you need to figure out how to solve.
For sure. Yeah. I have never worked on a project that was like similar. Like, I mean, similar maybe, but like not the same, like different problems, different, objectives. There's always something new, they were never the same in a lot of ways.
So being, you came from college, you went to the agency side, obviously Detroit market, right?
Yep.
And working primarily in auto.
Yep.
Like, tell us about the lessons learned and how that led you to where you're at now.
Yeah. Auto is, they always say it's like the hardest in advertising. Like if you can do auto, you can do anything, they say, in advertising. There's a lot of like legal things with auto, right? You guys know. Yeah. You do a lot of that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've learned a ton. The talent's interesting with auto, working with, drivers and, or real people. I did some of that. I learned a ton. I was still learning when I left the agency side. And when I did, it was just sort of like the writing was on the wall. It was time for me to explore. I had, some opportunities open up to me, and this is the one I chose. I chose it based on how I felt about the company I was going to work for and how I felt about the humans there. I felt like it was a really good company, good values, and that was really important to me. But it was scary as hell. I mean, going to work, I was working at big agencies, GTB specifically. In our office in Dearborn had 1,300 people when I started there. And now I work for a company that we have we range from 7 to 10 usually.
A little bit of a different world there.
Yeah. Completely.
Do you like that?
I do. It was scary because, there's not, so few people. It just means a small company. I just feel like it's a little more vulnerable. Can't
really hide much.
No. And, you're not guaranteed anything. You guys, you're not guaranteed a project. You could have great relationships with clients, but you're never guaranteed. They'd love to work with you, but there's XYZ keeping them from bringing a project to you. And so you do your best. And if you don't get enough for that year, things could fall apart easily.
Yeah.
So
I totally relate to that, and I gotta say, the relationship is the most important part, right?
Yes.
And I'm excited to hear, how you go about that. But I think the thing that you're hitting on there is you can have all of the best relationships. You can have, great friends, and you can be right for the project. But in an agency, right, there's a lot of levels. There's a whole hierarchy of decisions and decision trees and all these things that, you may not have control over, right?
Sure.
And the best case, probably, speaking from the vendor side for just production, is the best case is you have a few of the check boxes and you have a good enough experience and they like you enough that they'll take a risk on you or go with you, right, for the project, and then you establish trust. But that's an uphill battle for
sure.
most vendors, and it's probably not just on production, right? Speaking from the music side, I'm sure you face similar things.
We face all of those, plus the extreme subjectivity of music and who likes what, and everybody likes different music and what sounds good to them. I've heard so many people people that rep, lots of companies, they're I stay away from music because it's just so frustrating. And today there's I'd say there's definitely an oversaturation of music and music companies and musicians and composers in the market, all trying to make it on their own, not necessarily tied to a company. We work with tons of musicians and composers, obviously. But there's just this other level. There's all the cooks of the kitchen in the agency and brand side, but then there's this level of also subjectivity, just plain and simple. Do you like our music? And, we might have several different types of music. And it's just, and sometimes we get these, a lot of times we get cattle calls where it's we're just thrown into in our tracks are just thrown into a bucket. And it's here, what do you like? What fits? Yeah. And it's it's frustrating, especially when clients actually have a budget for music and they're just well, we're just going to shop around. And it's how about we save you all that time and just
curate something you need.
Yes. And make it exactly how you want it. We can do that. We have all the resources and we can be it's more of a fun process for everybody. They get to have a say in what the music's doing. And so there's that.
You can have someone guide you through the process too.
Exactly.
What does the process look like typically?
For music? Well, we usually get reached out. Sometimes it's very vague.
It seems like it varies, but I guess in an ideal world, what does the process look like?
An ideal world, I can tell you what it is, and then because sometimes we literally just get an email. It's we need music, and here's a sentence of what we need.
Oh man,
we're
yeah.
like, well, like, what's your budget?
Something vibey.
Yeah, or like, very vague words,
Cool.
and a lot of the stuff. Yeah, like, we need something really cool.
What's a vibe to you?
Hey, Britt, I need a 30-second really cool track.
Cool, sounds great. Like, we honestly, we've gotten those requests where it's just like literally a sentence, no discussion. We can't have a call. Why can't we have a call? Like, can I just talk to you and see
5
what this
minutes,
means?
please.
Yeah. Like, what genre? Like, what's your budget? And some, like, I know on the first podcast,
Yeah.
the whole budget. Like, I love that you said this, Josh, where you were like, we don't ask you what your budget is to like try to take all your money. It's just like what's possible.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes people are literally like, well, what does it cost? I'm like, well, what do you want?
Yeah.
Can we have a conversation?
Oh my gosh, these guys know that I get fired up about this
Yeah.
because the real reason behind that, if you're working with good people, coming back to your values, right? Like
Yep.
if you're working with good people, the reason you want to know budget is to show them what you can provide for them from a
Exactly.
value perspective. If you just give us a range, we
Yep.
can tell you what's possible. And I'm sorry, but the money dictates that.
It does.
It does. And
Completely.
by giving somebody your budget, they're not trying to, as long as you trust them, you want to work with them, they're not trying to take all of that money,
No.
right? You're going to receive quotes. It's not like you're committing to it, and there's always negotiation. That's
Yep.
the thing, right?
Let's have a conversation
Let's have
about
a
it.
conversation
Yeah.
about it, right? And
What's
so
fair?
what I noticed is that it's often the people who don't have that experience, that knowledge of like, okay, they're going to give me a quote and I can come back and like negotiate this. Hey, let's just say it's a 10 to 20 grand quote, right? That's a huge range in between there for, maybe it's one track, right? I don't know. Well, it doesn't mean that, the first quote, which might be 19.5, is the firm quote, right? Let's try to figure out what the best thing is. And I think if you just have a little bit of time,
Yep.
just a
Just
little bit, it doesn't take a lot.
minutes.
Yeah, a couple minutes. We can dial that in,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, exactly. We have a range of like services, obviously, we can provide. And I think historically people, like when I started at Howling, a lot of people actually in Detroit knew Howling, which was nice. But it was funny, like my friends in the industry were like, oh, you don't have to tell me. You don't have to like give me the pitch. I already know what you guys do. And I was like, well, do you know we have a library now? Because that started the day that I started, we opened it up to the world.
Yep.
So that's obviously, there's a range of things we can do. Like we start with the library. We then can customize our library. We then can we can start from scratch. We can give you a custom track. Or we can curate and license a big name song. We can track that down for you. Do all that negotiating. That's a wide range of money right there. Like what things cost. So sometimes when people are like, just tell me what it costs, I'm like, well, here's a menu then. Like, and it's not a set menu. Like, and I have to almost based off of like the brand. It all depends too. Like, what are the deliverables? What's the brand? Where is it living? How long?
Licensing, right? And
Licensing,
and this is a lot of the discussions you'll get from the agency side, right? If you do get a one line, from agency producer that says like, I need this type of track, just take the 5 minutes, right?
Yeah,
is really what you're getting at. Like the ideal situation is probably having a call just to really define what you need and then what a budget range is. Not asking you to lock it in.
Yeah. I always tell everyone we can just have a conversation. And that's back to your question. I'm sorry.
No, this is how this works.
The best way for it to happen is we get a brief, or we'd love a script. If you have a cut, like we love having
as much information as you can give me.
Yes, exactly. Like even if it's like, here's this like deep dive the brand did over the last 2 years of like what the brand is. We love that shit.
Some of their current work and the music that they've been putting out and what they like.
Yep, exactly. A lot of times we don't get that and we look it up. Like we research the heck out of the brand, what they're doing, what their values are, what they're like, and you wouldn't think a 1 30-second piece of music would need all that background, but it helps so much.
What's good?
Yeah, exactly. Well, because when we have that conversation, which is the next step, like we really like to have all the pieces, do our research, and and then talk to the teams. Like we love to talk to the producers, the creative team, if possible, client. Like that's so rare.
Right.
We don't really get that conversation, which stinks. I think that would help a lot if we could just connect that piece. But I think so many times the agency wants that control.
Right.
And that's the frustrating part, because sometimes I think we end up making what the creative team loves.
Agency creative team
loves. And then it gets to the client and they're like, well, I don't like that music.
Right.
And like their music tastes are so different. And
how do you feel about that? I'm really interested in that, because that's a probably more generalized creative question, where we face that on all things, right? Could be imagery, cinematography, a shot, right? Where agency is obviously the agency of record for this client. Mm-hmm. They're responsible for the creative. They're responsible for the outcome of the campaign that they're running for this client team, right? And the client team often doesn't get to see the first rough, sometimes the second rough. Like they're seeing sometimes the thing that's very near to finished. And in our experience too, having the client, depending on who the client is, involved a little bit earlier on can really make a big difference, right? In the final deliverable. Is it because either, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm curious, on your perspective, is it because the agency wants to guard the client from confusion or potential mishap, or is it because they really don't want a vendor to come in and take that business?
I don't think they're worried about the vendor taking the business. Like as a music company, we're not. We're not taking away the agency business, but I think they don't want to. I think they're worried about bombarding them with too much information, too many decisions, right? Like the brand. I've been in those client meetings. So there's tons of clients that are all big board room, like big board meetings, like. All this long table of executives that are looking over stuff, and everybody has it's even more cooked. So I think they like to narrow down decisions before they take it to the client. So that way it's like, here's two options. Here's our preferred, and then if you hate that, here you go.
Right. So in that way, it's actually really helpful to have an agency when there's a big client, big boardroom of clients.
Yes.
The agency can really be of value.
Absolutely.
To be able to kind of narrow that down and dial it in. And that's where I see like a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand like there is a great reason to have these creative teams, and especially a little bit more agile creative teams, because they can help the product be really, really good, right? And obviously it's their idea too. So getting the right vendors in place to be able to help that process. How do you guys, in this ideal world, continue to dial that in? Like, is there a specific example you could like give as like a entire flow through, like from step one to A to Z type thing?
Our dial in our process of how things.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess should I go back to like the step I was at?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So after a creative meeting, which that helps so much, just because so many times we get on the phone with creatives and they're like, we want, a jam band. And it's like, well, that's not what your reference said. Like, not at all, or that's not what your reference was. That's not what that is. That's not how we'd classify that. Like some people just
using the wrong terms,
which like I personally have never been a musician. I've been in like the music world, but I've never been a musician. So I speak very generally about my like music as well. So I can kind of be that like,
this is what they mean.
Yeah. In between. And like I call them my musical geniuses. They just like, they know how to dissect it. And they're like, this is what they want. Like, and then let's talk about that. They'll try to like pull out, and like use more general words to talk about music. So, from there, once we're done with that, we've got our list of notes. We have like long discussions on our end. Like, what do you think? Like, what's our next steps? And, every project's different. But usually we try to figure out, like, sometimes people want us to do a library pull, which we're happy to do. We like to start there with references and start pulling things. But sometimes people are moving so fast that like they give us a couple references and we're like, you know what? Between the three references, we don't have anything exactly like with those three elements from each reference that they want. And there's actually not really a piece of music out there that has that. Now let's try to create something like that. And depending on like what the budget is, if they're giving us demo money, which is so rare these days, but so helpful if like, you're just like, hey, I have a big budget. Like some people come to us, they have a big budget, but they don't want to allocate any of that towards demos. And it's like, why wouldn't you?
It's like getting a test print or like not getting a test print and then running like 100,000 copies.
Yeah. It's like, just take a little extra, like little off the top of that like that whole budget and just use that for the demo to explore. If you want to explore.
Tell
Creative dictates everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tell us the demo thing. So
yeah.
What exactly is a demo?
A demo is, well, we usually provide like anywhere from 3 to 5 demos, and we take their references and we usually, because we have tons of composers all over that we work with. We have like our composer core, our composers that we work with all the time. They're all like, we've got ones specialized in different things. So we call those guys up who's specializing in whatever we're talking about. We call those guys up. Hey, here's like, we write a full brief. We send them references. We try to keep it really clean for them. That's why we have that creative call. So it's not like we're not just passing along what the agency sent, because usually it's so broad and like
translate this.
Yeah, exactly. We translate it. We send them references. We send them like, here's where we think we are. Here's what we think you should try to do, but also use your creativity, use like what you think works. And then from there, we get back a bunch of stuff. We reach out to like a lot of composers, and then we get back a bunch of stuff and we comb through all of that.
Okay.
We might go back and say like, hey, this piece is really great, but let's change up these couple of things. Let's take that out. Might give them a couple, depending on how much time. Sometimes like last week we were on round 2 of demos, and we were given 12 hours. I was called at like, a little bit more than 12 hours, but I was called at like 5:30 in the evening and like, hey, can you get this to me tomorrow morning? It's like,
overnight.
So my composers now have to work overnight. So that's cool. And some of them are, across the world, and, hopefully they get this email from us and, see it in like when they wake up in the morning and can do that. But like, we're not banking on that happening. Like, and we don't put pressure obviously on our composers. Like, if you can do this within your life, like that's cool.
Right.
And here's, here's the brief, here's the changes. Cool.
Sometimes those people have wild hours anyways. Just
actually, like the musicians, a lot of them that I know, they prefer to work like
at night.
Our founder is, he's like, I love this shit. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like that's literally what he said last week. He's like, okay, this is what I do. Like, I'm on
Some
it.
of the best ideas are from like 11 p.m. until like 2 a.m.
Yeah, see, those creative minds, that's how they work in the middle of the night, and I get it. So, but then it's just real rough the next day when we have to like, oh, now we're gonna have a client meeting. Okay, these guys aren't gonna be in the best shape, but so that's why I'm there.
Yeah, Yeah. Do you sense like that urgency to get it done is because it is a last minute thing? Like it's not starting at the beginning of the process, so they need that turnaround in 12 hours versus if there was a little bit more on the front end, like, hey, we're going into this project, here's what we're thinking. Yeah.
It just depends. That one specifically was like, hey, we're having another client meeting and we want to have the cuts done. We want to like finalize our edit because we're on this timeline, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't always get, I'd say 50% of the time we get, here's our timeline from the start, which is really helpful. Like I was given a timeline last week and I was able to build, and the producer specifically asked like, hey, can you build in your timeline and within mine? It's like, great, this is awesome. Instead of like us just flying by the seat of our pants, but we do that a lot too and we're fine with it. But yeah, did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. Okay.
Okay.
I think that's great because I think the concern is always you're coming in at the last minute, right? Yeah. And so then you put pressure way down the line, right? And people don't understand that it trickles up and down, right? Where if you're, at the agency, that request to get it done tomorrow morning, they may not know that is unrealistic, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to know what's realistic and what's not.
Just feels like you're just changing a couple things on the track that are small, right? Like, just change that. It's just a little change.
Right. But really it's not. Right?
Yeah, no. Well, and specifically last week we got a whole basically new brief. And I was like, can you turn that around by tomorrow morning? So it's like, it wasn't just like tweaking what we currently had. And we weren't even, a lot of the times we aren't even told like, hey, we really liked these. Just, there are times where we're definitely told that, like, we really like these, let's revise this.
Yeah.
But there's times where they just like, they went to the clients didn't like anything that they were wanting. And that's, like I said before, it's coming from the creative team, what they want, and they're going through it and then putting that track on. And then the clients go, I don't like this. So then now they're talking about how, and then we have to start all over.
Right. So it's a little bit of a demo process here.
For sure.
This little part of the process is the demo process.
Yep.
And then eventually you move on from demo, right?
Yep.
Something is selected in that vein and you get to go actually compose or license or, what's that next step?
So usually the demo process is usually done because they're doing a competitive demo. So we're up against, just like you guys when you bid, or you do a treatment. It's basically like we're doing demos with like we sort of give some sort of treatment kind of thing, like this is how it's going to be to work with us. And from there it's like, did we win the demo? And then we move forward and then we finalize things. And it depends on where you are in the process. Like we've gotten calls before anything's been shot, which is what we prefer. And what we love is like, hey, we're about to shoot this. Can you give us some like, demos beforehand and make sure we like your style, or we're on the same page. We're collaborating well together as partners. And then, okay, now you've won, and now you're going to move into, like we've worked on projects where we're called at the shoot because music is so important to the spot. Like they need to have a beat map. Yeah. Like while they're on the shoot to get, talent on the beat, them saying whatever they're supposed to be saying within the song. There's some of those like where the talent's playing with the music. We did something where they're like driving in the car and they're singing our song. And so obviously we need those calls before they shoot. And, or we did an anthem spot where it was like very important. Like we were making the anthem up as they sort of shot. So we were getting calls while they were on shoot, like, hey, is this working? Hey, send us this file. We were sending things back and forth and dialing that in. It made it really, really nice once they went into post because it was like seamless.
That's highly collaborative.
Yes.
What do
that's
you
what
like?
we prefer.
You like that?
Yes.
That's like the preference.
It sounds kind of fun too,
because
it sounds creative and
and we're not left in the like some of these projects we're just like left in the dark, and then we get this like frantic
make something
call.
Out of nothing.
Yeah, we get frantic like last minute calls. Oh, they hate it. Can you make something? It's like just like if you award the demo early on and then take us along for your project, it's going to be so much better. The music's going to be like so powerful.
The challenge with music is people who aren't a musician, or even musicians sometimes struggle with this. It's like, how do you define what you like or dislike about the music?
Yeah.
And that's probably a lot of what you guys do is translate from maybe executives who are ultimately approving this, who probably aren't necessarily creative. They're the ones who are maybe funding the whole process, distilling that to the agency and then to you guys, being able to take all of that and translate it to like, hey, we don't like this. It's difficult. Like you almost want your like composers to be, that's where you would want like be able to ask direct questions to the end client, because there's so many different ways that music can go that like, if you know how to ask the right questions, you can kind of dial that in.
Right. That is one of our biggest questions. We ask, what do you like? What don't you like? Because we get references and sometimes it's like, we feel like we're playing beat the reference.
Yeah.
It's like, do you just want us to make this track? I mean, a lot of times it's like they like the track because they can't have it.
And they also can't think about like what they would like that would be different because they haven't heard it.
Right.
So that's like the only way that they can imagine something in that place is because they've thought about that track the entire time. And then they come in, they're like, oh, we got to make something different here. Yeah.
And the demo love is real too. Like when they hear it on an edit and you're sitting in, especially if you're sitting in that edit suite, the editor's everybody in that suite's hearing that track over and over. And it's just the demo, but now here's some real music. Oh, that doesn't sound right, because we've been listening to like our brain is almost trained to only like this track because we're so used to it from the genesis of the edit. It's like this is what we heard. Yeah. This is what fits in our brains.
That's really interesting because you work in the more ethereal realm of this production where from a film side, you get to see the result. You get to see the imagery, you get to feel it. You are often working with people, so there's emotion. You connect as a human to that emotion.
Yeah.
But when you're just hearing this, something you can't see, can't touch, anything like that, you're really locking into the feeling. And people get very tied to the feeling, right? It's easier to break visually because maybe you have a different take, maybe you have a different angle, things like that, right? So you can break that thread. But when you have that thread that's more like a rope and it's like they're tied to the demo, as you're saying, right?
Yep.
It's really hard to break. How do you go about that, right? Like how do you go from demo to finalized track?
How do we break that, like that
emotion, that
what
love,
happens when a client hears the demo, falls in love with it, and then you got to come up with something that's cleared and like finished?
Yeah. Well, there's times where literally just like we lose the project. Honestly, like that's happened to us many times.
Right.
It's just
probably
like,
a part of the business, right?
Yeah, totally. It's like we get tied to this. Demo love is a real thing, and that's why, like, I always try to get in early. I try to
set an expectation.
Yeah, and try to get with like, hey, can I get with your editor and get them a track? Because they're the ones a lot of times just pulling something to cut to, right? So it's like, hey, can we get with them, give them a track, and then our track will be the demo love. It's because that's simply what it is.
Carl's in there editing right now. So
Yeah, Carl, let me give you some tracks. Yeah, so it's and from like how we don't, it's just so subjective and it's so out of our control, but we do our best and we do our best to provide everything possible to help that situation and help them, love our track and so we do ask those questions. Serve them exactly what they want. So it's like, hey, let's talk about what you love about that track, what you don't love about it. Why didn't you just try to license that track? Because we can do that. We can help you with that. But why aren't you trying to go down that route? Is it just because of money, or do you not? Is there something you don't like? And then let's try to create something that you really love. And I think it's the key is just like collaborating as closely as possible and really learning what they're looking for and what they want.
I relate to that. I don't know if you knew, but I come from music production background.
Okay.
So before I worked in film and for Taproot, I was freelance music producing and recording artists and helping them. And
you're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. Yeah, I'm still doing it. We actually just composed a track for a pitch it was a very track dependent pitch. And like, we're just like, we're very early stages. I was like, okay, I'll just throw something together and send it to them. I definitely know the pain of like sitting and listening to somebody. It's actually really fun though, in a sense, because you can kind of solve a puzzle of like, you just sent me 5 references that are completely different. And then like really eventually you can kind of infer what they do like or dislike about it. To me, like I think about the production techniques, the dynamics that they used, the what's in sonically right now, and like maybe the feel that it does present. And then like something might be completely different in a sense of like musical notes and those things, but it could feel like even the way it was recorded and mixed and processed was in a certain way that made them feel that way. Because you could take like one song and mix it completely different and give it like a grungier feel or like a really polished pop feel, or like anything in between. So I definitely relate to that journey. And I think in film it's still a thing, right? It's like it is a little bit of a different level, because I do think it is more people are usually better at looking at something visual and like discerning what they like or dislike about it, because 100%. They can point and say that's what I like or I don't like. Music, it's really difficult for someone who doesn't understand the bones of what's going on to sit and point out like that dynamic rise, don't want that, or that space right there was too long, I want it shorter, or like the tempo needs to be 5 BPM faster, or like it's really difficult. So that's cool though.
We try to walk through all those and ask a lot of those questions. Like here, if you don't know how to verbalize that to us, like let us walk you through like what we think you might not like, or what we're finding like that's bothering us about it with your creative. So the value I see for agencies and clients is to bring you on early, like you said, kind of at the beginning of this, right? Because when you rely on people who do know the lingo and are experts at translating what you want into reality, in a sense,
translating it to the people who are playing the instruments, who are recording things in a way to get them that end result, you're setting your project up for success, right?
For sure.
So I guess like big takeaway, everybody, bring in the music early, think about it early, and rely on the people that are there to help you.
Right. That's why we're partners, you know, that's why you call us. And I always tell people, just call us if you have any questions. Like even if you don't have like necessarily, some people are like, oh, I don't want to like bother you.
Waste your time.
Yeah. I don't want to waste your time because I don't really have a budget. I'm like, what? But like, do you just need help? Like, we're here to just be your partner. I don't care if you're like paying me for that. You know, I'm not expecting you to like bring us
Here's
money.
the bill for the 5-minute phone call that we had.
Like, I'm going to help you out as much as I possibly can. And like, I've always, you know, my friends in the industry, like that I've worked with in the past before this, they do that. And they find that like, it's really helpful because they'll just call me and be like, you know, let's shoot the shit for a second. Like, what do you think about this? And I will like list out and I will talk to my team. I will dig in and find out like, this is what's possible. And this is what, you know, I think would be really beneficial for your project. And if you use us, cool. Like if you have to go a different way, I get it. You know, that's what happens.
It sounds like the real value too is really the white glove experience that you're providing to people. Whereas sure, they can go on a stock music site, right, and download whatever they want.
Yeah.
But what you're saying and what I think, you know, my experience with you is very much like, sure, you can download that track, but how about, why don't you take a look at this library and get what you really want? Because we can customize it for you. We might be able to find a similar track that's like this. We can compose a new track for you, or, you know, we can really refine the track that you have right now and get it to sound similar. But there's a process to that. And that process is what you outlined, right? Like bring us in early. We can create some demos if your budget allows. We can go through the demo process. We can get you something that's customized that ultimately gives your finished product a better feeling, a better finish, feels more customized, and you're going to get it more dialed in than you can ever get with a stock site, right?
The quality as a whole is going to be so much better. You know, it helps the picture feel stronger, right? You know, you get those feels that you weren't going to get, you know, when you just pulled it off wherever. And I think, you know, so many times people are just, they don't think they have enough time. We don't have time. I don't have time for a conversation. It's like, just call, like, literally it's going to be 30 seconds on the phone instead of you
email.
writing.
In that email, we could have already had this handled if you just shot me a call.
Like I could have asked you questions really quickly instead of this back and forth we're doing. Like, let's just have a quick call. So many people are afraid to do that. And so then they just resort, like, it's almost
Snapchat me. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Right. I don't know if like, it's just, I don't want to say our generation, like that just wants to hide behind the computer.
That's why I was joking about like people are so not used to calling or like face-to-face interactions.
Oh my gosh.
Like it's so much more efficient.
Yes. I've called, you know, like friends of mine that work in the industry and like out of the blue, like we didn't set up this call, and like even they get like, whoa,
why are you calling me? Is something wrong? Like what's going on?
What's going on? And it's like, no, I just was like
checking
calling to check in, or I had a question about something you sent me or something you're doing. I just wanted to ask you. And people are
this wasn't scheduled.
Yeah. So I just like, I go with that. Like, okay, I'll just send you a text or whatever. But yeah, when it comes to a project and people think like everything's moving so fast, like I think a lot of producers, I've been there, like I felt overwhelmed. Like I don't have time to deal with this. I'm dealing with the production company. Like there's so much, so like, as you guys know, there's all the little details you have with production and then post, and like music is always left to the last thing. And I think people are just kind of like, oh, we'll figure it out later and it'll be fine.
Now that we have a final edit, now we need to like get music we can actually clear for this project.
It's like, what if you would have thought of that from the start? Like you would have saved yourself so much time later on.
It feels like a lot of people, especially on the agency side, know that they should. It's just kind of that, exactly what you're outlining, that stress. And so, you know, vendors can be good partners by helping, you know, start that process earlier. So production companies can start by, hey, we need to start thinking about music, having that preemptive conversation.
Alleviate that stress a little bit.
That stress, right? That's how we could all help from an industry perspective, right? Get that at the forefront, because it is such a huge thing. And that's why you're here, because we know that is a thing. We know that sound drives story. It moves it forward. It inspires. It does a lot of it does so much that most people are incapable of comprehending. And I think that's like a good cap to put on the conversation, like of why it's important. what I'd love to know from you is some of the favorite projects you've worked on in the past musically. Like, I don't know if you're allowed to name drop, but maybe giving some examples of things that, and I don't mean to put you on the spot,
no, it's okay.
but if there are some examples of things that you've worked on where you're like, man, it made a huge difference because of this. And it gives our audience, our listeners, an opportunity to like feel and see the difference because they'll go look it up, right?
Yeah. No, I can mention a few. Like we've won awards for, when we did the Buchanan's spot. That's the one I mentioned. Like we were called early. I actually just like happened to text the executive producer. He's a buddy. I sent him a text one day and he was like, oh, perfect timing. We're actually like, I'm talking to music companies today. I kind of forgot about you guys. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
But that happens. But he's like, no, like, let's get you in the mix, and got us in early. And then we did we were in that process. We were sending them stuff. They were the ones we were sending stuff like on the shoot. They were sending us stuff back to make sure we were lined up. And that's like the most fun. What else?
So that was Buchanan?
That was Buchanan's, okay. Yep.
Look that up.
So that was for the World Cup last summer. So that was a big stage. We've never done a Super Bowl spot, and it's killing us a little. We did a regional one last year for Corwell.
Oh, cool.
The one you see everywhere in Michigan.
Yeah.
But like it's funny because the rest of my teams, we're based out of Nashville, so most everyone's there, or we got a couple people in California. So I'm like, if you guys were here, like you'd see how, everybody sees this spot here. Yeah. That was fun.
Is there any documentary projects that you've worked on that you're particularly, proud of?
We have gotten I've gotten calls. I haven't personally worked on any documentary, but my team has. Okay. We've been in business since 1999. So, I wasn't there. Yeah. I was a kid. Yeah. But yeah, we've done movies and documentary and film and, shorts and all sorts of stuff.
That's good for the audience to know because, it's not just advertising commercial work, right?
We're definitely like, that's where we are known for. That's where we sort of specialize in as of like our history, but we're trying to get into all those spaces a little bit more. And I think a lot of people just assume, custom music for advertising. And it's like, that's what we definitely have like the heaviest hand in, but we would like to do all, we can do all.
Yeah. What is the state of the music industry in terms of film and commercial right now? I know you mentioned it's very saturated with like a lot of things. Yeah. Could you explain that a little bit?
I just think there is, I know when I talk to my agency producer friends, like just advertising side, I know there's tons of music houses popping up. I think a lot of people are trying to get their own thing going. And I've like from the agency producing side, I've actually worked with just single composers to produce projects for the agency. I didn't have the best experience just because it was a lot. Mm-hmm. And when you have a team like our company, like if you're in a different time zone, you're working long hours, you're asked for things, by the morning and it's already night where you are, it's helpful to be able to lean on a team that's like very experienced in all areas of music. And that's why like that one experience I had, I was pushed by my creatives to use the composer because the director wanted that composer. And I was like, all right, we can try it. Like I always am going to advocate for my creatives and, try to get them what they want and work with who they want. But, after that was a good learning experience for me because it was only on me to get these things from this composer, and he's like, he was throwing up.
Probably also managing other projects at the same time.
Yeah. And he was very overwhelmed whenever I called him by any of the asks, and I was just like, okay. So it's nice for like with us. I never worry about that. We've got
plenty of resources, right? So
we're all in different time zones too. Yeah. So it's like for like it's night. I'm about to go to sleep, but Ryan's in San Diego. He's staying up.
He's got a half day left. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, overall, like music industry, I think it's just, even I just get, when I go to listen to something in the car, I'm like, where do I start? Do I go back to like the classics that I love, or do I try to listen to something new? I just always feel overwhelmed because there is so much.
What makes music good to you?
Makes it good.
Yeah. What's good music to you?
I don't know. It just personally has to like hit like a feeling. I am, unlike a lot of my coworkers and the music geniuses, I actually love lyrics and vocals. I like if there's a good vocalist, I'm going to listen to lyrics. Are there good lyrics? Oh, and then I kind of like, but the music obviously has to be good.
Yeah, that's kind of a given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I'm like some people are like, oh, I don't even listen to the lyrics. But that's like one of the first things I sort of listen to. But I mean, just
there's so much out there in terms of like sonics too, where that almost helps distill down like whether that's something that you would engage with further as well.
Right.
Like in my opinion, I'm a little bit similar. We're actually talking about that today, where like we were talking about a lot of the mainstream. When you like actually listen to the lyrics, you just turn it off and listen to something else because you're like, this says nothing and it does nothing for anybody. Versus something that like expresses something meaningful or I don't know, has some sort of value to the world, not just straight up like fluff for the ears. And again, I'm all for a catchy hook. Yeah. But the best is when they're combined, right?
I'll go deep on this, garbage pop country, that's just like meaningless lyrics about drinking whiskey. Like come on.
Some of the new rap, like it's like, how long did it take you to make that song? Like the beat's the same over and over, and you said 5 words that don't mean anything together.
Right. Yeah. If there's a trend, what would you like from a music perspective say that you're seeing? From a trend. Maybe even in commercial advertising. Like is there a trend of what the audio feeling is? Is it poppy? Is it hip hop?
Today on Monday, 12:08 p.m.
It changes
that's changing all the time. But like we get a lot of like modern. I think what's good on TV sometimes makes a big, like people are influenced by that if they're watching a show and the opening song's really good. They keep hearing that over and over, and they're they watched it all week, and now they go to work. That's all they're thinking about. Like we've gotten a lot of like White Lotus references in the last year. Oh, I love that song. Let's get something, like so many requests for that. So we started making albums like specifically in those areas. Okay. Which something we do, like we take like all these briefs we get and like, what are we getting like a lot? Let's make more of that and have that.
So you'll get a lot of requests of like Stranger Things, right? Yeah. Like, oh, we love the vibe of this 80s synth beat, let's get a lot of these Stranger Things. And then you guys will create an album or multiple albums to put in the library.
Yep. And if we're not getting requests for it and we're just hearing a lot of that stuff, we'll start making,
ahead of the curve.
Yeah. We'll be proactive.
That is one thing in film. So I came from making music for, just consumption directly to, everybody in the public. And in that sphere, usually there's like cycles, right? Where like someone will make something and then everyone kind of makes something like it. And then, but then it kind of like continually just is like a wave, right? Where you get like, whole Mumford and Sons and folk and like sounding like it's really like organic, bluegrassy, lots of real instruments recorded. And then like, someone will throw something out that's back like the 80s, like, and then it gets big and then everyone's doing that. And then it kind of goes to like pop and then it kind of circles back around and it's kind of just this like big circle. Yeah. But when you can anticipate those and then make things ahead of time, then you're in the right spot. Yep. When the creative brief comes your way and go, yep, we already have an album that's like anticipating their needs.
For sure. And we all are aware of, and listening to what's out there and trying to pay attention. That's a big part of like, especially our production side of our library. They're always just like, like I said, if we're not getting asked for those things, it's like, what can we be proactive about we know is hot right now and people are wanting or they're super into because of this show or, whatever. So that's fun for us to like, just kind of be in that world as well,
Yeah.
If you won $10 million tomorrow, what would you spend it on?
I did read this question before and I was like, I would travel probably for like a good year or two.
$10 million in a year. That's a lot.
Well, I wouldn't spend that. Yeah. I would
that'd
honestly
be a pretty good vacation.
Yeah, I would honestly like live pretty much the same lifestyle. I wouldn't I'm not like a big
You're going to go buy a mansion and do all this.
No, yeah. I'm like, what's that going to do for me? I mean, I'm going to travel, and then I would while traveling probably really hone in on what I want to do and invest that money in. And I would do something still within production, music, but I'd probably do something that involves fashion or fitness.
I knew you were going to be a great guest.
Yeah.
Well, the reason is I think, values internally speak to this, but the money it's such a repeated phrase, right? Money's never going to buy you happiness. And you can talk to a lot of very wealthy people and they'll always tell you yeah, I bought a Ferrari, but it only made me happy for a week.
Yeah.
And then I have a Ferrari.
You're over it.
You get over it, yeah. Right? But the experience of the purpose, the meaning that you get from what you do is what brings you eternal, happiness. And if you're really in the position, which everything you said today is you love what you do, you love this industry, you love the music side of it, you love, what you do from a, high arcing, perspective. Obviously you can do that on the agency side. You could do this for Howling, what you're doing right now. You can do that in a lot of places, but you get meaning from it, and that derives happiness. So that question is really to kind of discover, to the core of what type of person, are you? And I think the industry sometimes gets a bad rap, right? With shows like Mad Men or something like that, old school advertising, right? And there's definitely bad apples, but there's a lot of good people in this industry who want to make meaningful things, that want to do things that help to push perspectives and change, and finding those people to work with is really important. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective and your values, and obviously we'd like to work with Howling,
Yeah.
So
call us up, please. Yeah. We'd love to work with you guys.
Is there anything else you that we didn't cover off?
Well, something you just said, I think that's a good point. I think people they think of advertising. They don't always think. I struggled with coming back to work after having my first child, because I was like, what? It's just advertising. This isn't important. But there's so many good people that I've gotten to know and become close friends, almost family with. And I think all these people are just there is a couple bad apples, but there's so many more good, and they are striving to make the world better. And, I remember my mom kind of having a conversation with me, because I was just I want to do something meaningful. I love production. I love this, but I was advertising side of it. Do I have to do this? She's some of these brands, they you've worked on projects where they were they're using their money to give back. And I think, remembering that it all goes, there's all these good people that work within the industry, and, everyone's trying to do their best and give back. So, important thing to remember. I don't know if we need that in the episode.
I think it was great.
No, I think it was great. That's what we're about.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what keeps you coming back to work, right? It's mainly the people. You love what you do, but if you had terrible people around you every day, it's you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't come back. You'd find a different.
We've all had those jobs too, right?
Yeah.
We've all had those jobs where it's man, why do I do this? And then you get back into a good one. And you're because of the people.
Yeah.
You can work almost any job. And if people around you are positive and you like them, you can find meaning in that. I've found that to be true. You could work an entry level job at some random place and it could be the best or worst experience in your life.
Yeah.
So, that's inspiring to me to think about being someone who inspires other people around me, provides value and things like that. Now time for the second part of our episode where we dive into the meaning of life.
Okay, great.
I immediately want to go there.
Send us out, man. Send us out.
No, I really appreciate all of your insights. I think music and film is even more of a mysterious process than even film, and maybe even in my opinion. And so it was really cool to kind of hear how that process goes and what you guys focus on. And I definitely know that we are looking forward to the opportunity to work with you in the future, and encourage others to reach out if they have any other questions about music or anything like that. You said give her a call. So
give me a call. Calls are great. Or you can be like, passive aggressive and send me an email first, and I'll say, hey, can I call you? But yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. This was great.
Awesome. Well, thank you.